Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you really got one today. You can do this. Because this is Airwindows Pressure6. Here's the deal. I needed to work on compressors because I have put out a plugin called ChimeyGuitar, which is, if I remember correctly, using my Bezier style compressor, which is extremely clean, but I didn't like the way that it moved relative to instruments being played through it. I wasn't entirely happy with how that ran. So I dove back into Pressure to find out what I could make happen with it. And well, here we go. You can squish it right down like this. Pressure6 has this compress control and ratio control. Ratio is technically the same thing as dry-wet in this instance. So you start out with uncompressed, and you start bringing it in. This will work like a bus compressor. In that it might not be obvious whether it's doing anything here. Out. In. So its job here is to not screw up the sound of your mix, although I will note that unlike BeziComp, this does have a tone to it. Like you can put sine waves and things into it and hear some of the funny stuff it does interacting slightly with the sound. That's not unusual for plugins. I'm just calling it out because it is not the most pristine sound, but the way that it moves might be the best thing for doing full mixes or certain kinds of instruments. And I might very well be able to use it in the update to ChimeyGuitar, which is going to be ChimeyGuitar 2. I've got a bunch of stuff coming together. And here's how this one works. If you turn compress high, you can squish everything down pretty effectively, although it will still swing back up again when the sound goes quiet. As you start squishing it, you start hearing what it does to the sound. Impact and drama jumps out. And again, we're hearing this at full ratio. It's essentially a beyond infinite ratio. Like it's not a limiter, but it's doing a dynamic inversion style compression. So it's capable of squishing stuff down to basically silence. If we switch over to some simple drums, we start hearing some of the interesting qualities here. So here is a deeply squished and compressed sound where you can hear what the attacks are doing. It's not meant to be doing this with. So normally you would let it allow sound to come out and then start turning it up until it's doing the compression. And when you hear the attacks start poking out, that's how you know it's doing its thing. So ratio does something interesting, which I did on purpose to make it do what I wanted. Going to full dry is, of course, dry. But when you go to partial dry, the full ratio is actually giving you a saturation effect to catch extreme crazy peaks coming out of the compression. You can kind of hear them coming. Like those pops are being prevented from getting too loud. But as you back off ratio and bring dry in, it's also simultaneously backing off those particular spikes so that it becomes slightly less saturated than before. So you can get this. Here is purely uncompressed. As you bring in some of the compression, and it's not going to suddenly start distorting on you or anything, what you're getting is slightly less saturation on the amount of peak, meaning that these ranges of moderate effect, like here, you can scooch it in a little bit more, and we're hearing an obvious compression effect happening. But you can kind of dial it in subtly in two different directions at once, with more or less compression and with more or less ratio. Either way, the sweet spot available here is going to be pretty substantial. And then we can go back to the band music. And the same thing applies here. Full dry, full wet. And you can hear it kind of lunging out at you. So what you do is give it dry, and then blend it. And the idea there is to let you kind of dial in the drama that can be produced by compression used in this way. Now again, this is not a perfectly clean like limiter or compressor. There is a degree of grit in there, which is not going to be obvious if you start throwing sine waves in there or whatever. You'll see a little in there. And there's also the saturation on the output, which again, at full ratio, you're getting the most intense form of that saturation. And then as you pull the ratio back, it is not only blending from dry wet, so you're getting into a unsaturated dry signal and lowering the ratio in that way, but you're also gain staging the amplitude of the compressed sound into the saturation more gently, meaning that it's going to clean that up, but also allow more peak energy to happen. And the whole thing combines to what I think is going to work really nicely for a bus compressor and for use on a lot of different things. It's not necessarily going to do the full-on, like, blooming into exaggerated very-mu thing that some of my stuff has done. Like the original Pressure, it's real good at that. This is meant to be functional and to heighten the drama in any music you're putting through it. Anytime you're looking for that sort of glue compressor kind of thing, this might be a good call. Depends. I mean, I'm not your mom. I'm not going to tell you what you have to use. But that's what I was designing this for. Rather than making it show off and be a flashy, crazy compressor that did a whole bunch of weird pumping and zooming things, I've got it so it sort of pounces with dynamic attacks. And it does that across the entire frequency range. On the isolated drum track that I had, I stopped working on it when it was shaping the snare in a useful way, but also making the attack of the kick jump out in a particular way, and also shaping the way that cymbals wrapped around those things. And it should hardly be surprising that when you start including a bunch of other instruments in there, it does all of those things correctly. It's pretty cool. I am happy with this one. And so I am releasing it immediately as a surprise. And I'm going to get back to the reverb work that I'm doing. I had to delay on that one a little bit because I'm revising the way I'm doing it. I know I've put out K-Beyond and everything, and I've got a upgrade to my Guitar Hall and an upgrade to my Cathedral plugin. And I really think I ought to be able to do something useful with those. This last week, I had to take a few days just to sort of chill and breathe and stuff so that I can be working more effectively going forward. And that worked out really well, although some of the Minecraft entities might not think so. It got a little weird there. But all in all, expect some crazy reverb stuff to happen soon. I feel like I'm making some real breakthroughs, and it's going to end up giving me some really good sounds. And of course, I also need to work on Console H, which is not to say that this is necessarily the one that I would use in Console H, but since it came out so good, I guess the chances went up. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.